Here's 10 things to check if your Teledyne Laars mini boiler won't fire. Check your electrical panel for tripped fuses.
First thing you're going to want to check is that your boiler itself has power from the electrical panel, so it hasn't been tripped. So you're going to want to make sure that it actually has power. Okay, you'll see right now that the thermostat is actually not on. There we go. So now it's drawing heat. And if that itself does not cause your boiler to turn on, like it won't fire, then turn that back off temporarily. Pop this guy off. Okay, with the cover off, you're gonna see two different wires, red and a black. You're gonna wanna jumper those, which means you take a little wire and connect the two, or it's probably easier to be honest. So instead of doing this, instead of joining these together, like that, you can simply just unscrew these and twist them together. A switch for your boiler, right? Because if this is in the off position, you're not providing any power at all to the transformer. And from here to here, you should have 24 volts. So if you grab yourself a multimeter and measure here and here, you're gonna have 24 volts. We have power, and it's more than the 24 volts it needs, so that's not the issue. Okay, the next thing you should check if your boiler's not firing is you have a couple safety switches. This one's a flame rollout switch. There's a little button on the top. You're gonna wanna make sure that that hasn't popped up. It'll be quite easy, you'll notice right away if it is, because it'll pop down, back down. There's one on the front, right? Again, that is kind of in mine right back here. And on some models that have an automatic damper, you'll have a stuck vent switch, which will be right here. And that's an automatic damper to open up the vent. If your vent doesn't open, then that'll trip. On this one, it has it down here underneath. Again, just make sure that it's, in this case, it's underneath. Make sure you push the little button there and that it's not tripped. So if that's the case and it's still not coming on, you're gonna wanna take off the cover to your boiler, to the electrical panel. There's a couple little screws that hold it in. There's one over here and one over on this side that I've already removed. And that allows you to take this off. Somewhere buried in this wiring mess, you're gonna find something that looks like this. That's an inline fuse. You're gonna wanna open that up and check that fuse. So pop it out, make sure it's still good. You won't be able to tell probably by looking at it unless it's burnt right in the middle. It's a big fuse, 250 volt, I think 2 amp though, it's very small amperage. So run that through a fuse tester or a multimeter to make sure that it's good. All right, so you're gonna check your fuse, put that back in there. On your gas valve, make sure that it's on the run or on position and not on the pilot position. Because if your pilot had gone out or was short cycling, you may have had to restart it and you might have forgotten to move it back up to the on position. So if it's on the pilot position, which is down here, turn that back down there. Oh, okay, I just turned mine off. Now if you run it to the pilot, like that, so you can hear gas or push that to get gas, the boiler itself won't turn on until you turn it to the on position. Your pilot light is out and you can't get it restarted, like there's not any gas at all, then check the position of your valve here. So you get to a point where you can push that button. If you can push it, light it, but it doesn't stay lit, your pilot does not stay lit, it's likely your thermocouple, which is, if you look, get down there, right down in there. You'll have a little sensor on the other side of that where the pilot light is. And that's what's detecting whether or not there's heat and a flame. So first thing you need to do is clean it. So grab a little wire brush or grab some sandpaper and clean your thermocouple and try lighting your pilot light again and see if it stays on. If you follow the lines all the way down here, and when I say jumper, I mean literally take a little piece of wire and jump them across the two terminals, and you should get it to turn on that way. It's easier, quite honestly, to jumper these than to figure out if it's your end switch or your motor, which is this guy up here. It has a little screw that goes in the back. Once you undo that screw, you can take the cover off. This is a motor that opens and closes the valve, which allows the hot water to flow once it's heated up. Again, you don't necessarily need power to this because you can force it to the on position. All right, we can force it and hold it in the open position because there's a spring that holds it there. And that's without any power going to it. Because for this to work, you need power, and that little plunger there needs to rotate and push the switch, the end switch, to push on your end switch. And that completes the circuit, which then is supposed to tell the boiler to turn on. You know, an easy way to bypass this switch is you pop them off and put a little fuse, a mini fuse in between the two. Here, I'll grab one and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, by mini fuse, I mean something like this. Just take a little automotive fuse, stick one of the prongs in each side so that completes the circuit. Because these switches, all they're doing is disrupting the circuit. So if it trips, it pops it up, and there's no continuity between those anymore. So by doing this, you can bypass it. It's good if you're troubleshooting a unit. I suggest you do this because then you can check on the back of this with the tester to make sure those little prongs there that the fuse is good and there's continuity between these two wires. So do that on the front and the back.
Depending on your boiler and your water situation, whether it's a closed circuit or autofill, which mine is an autofill, you're going to want to go around and check all of your valves to make sure that they're open and they're not clogged. You can see this one has had a bit of a leak. It goes to my expansion tank, which was replaced. So check for leaks around your expansion tank. You might be letting air into your system. Air gets into your system, you may have what's called an airlock. Mine has these little manual release air bleeder valves. So unscrew those. Again, this one had a bit of a leak around it. Screw this one. There we go. Make sure everything's in the on position. Right, so go through, try to follow it as far as you can to see all the water lines, that all the valves are open. So within my system, if it gets low on water, it will fill it back up. If yours is a closed system, hopefully you'll have a way to check your water levels. One thing I also wanted to point out is the filter. Right, that's this guy here, and I just replaced mine. So I'm not going to go through how to do that in this video, but I will make another video showing you. Basically, you take off this ring, and if I come around this side, because this is the other side I always do it on, it has a little pin guy here, and you throw them into here. Sorry. And I added arrows because it's kind of confusing because you're looking down on it instead of up from the bottom. But to get it off, you're going to want to tap it that way. Because this ring unscrews this way so that the ring will come down off the bottom, and this just then pulls down because it's just a spring kind of holds it in there. So check for if yours hasn't been replaced or you don't know when it's been replaced, you're going to want to check your filter to make sure it's not completely clogged. Because one thing that will stop your boiler from turning on is if it has a low water situation or if it's airlocked. All right, I hope that helps.